Now, as we move into the use of schemas and so forth, what we're actually getting at is validating XML. And I want to make sure here, take a little short pause, and let's talk about these two terms, well-formed and valid. Now, I talked about well-formed in an earlier video, and if you remember, a document is well-formed when it is structurally and syntactically correct. Now, if you remember, that means that the tags are nested properly, that the tags being case sensitive, they're matched, there's a root element that everything else is nested in, and so forth. If you go back to that video on the 5 commandments, if you will, about document structure. Also, the document must adhere to general XML rules, and we've talked about those some. Now, the fact that a document is well formed, that it's structurally and syntactically correct, does not necessarily mean it's a valid document, and don't let that confuse you, because valid simply means that this document satisfies a schema document. That means that there is a second document, a schema document, that this XML document points to, and the schema says, yeah, the data in that XML document has the correct structure. At that point, a document is valid. Now, here's something you need to hang on to. Validity can vary between schema documents, and let me draw this out for you. Let's say that I have an XML document, and I'll just kind of do a little crude drawing here to get you to follow me along. So here's my XML document. Now, if I've got a schema over here, and I check the XML document, I validate it against the schema, and it checks. Then, as far as this particular schema goes, this document is valid. But if I've got a different schema over here that calls for a different structure, and I check it, I validate it against that schema, and it says, nope, you're not valid there. So validity has to do with a certain instance of validating an XML document against a certain schema document. Now, here's the tough thing to remember. Not all documents require validation. Now, it seems kind of bizarre, I know, to think, well, okay, I'm going to be using a document that's not valid. But this is where you're getting down into what XML really is. XML is a markup language. It helps the data retain its value or its meaning. There may be situations where we just want to grab data from a database or whatever and want to represent it in XML so that we can stream it across the net, or that we just want to hold that data. We don't care if it's valid or not. We know the data is what we want. We just got it out of the database. And so we're not going to be concerned with validation. Make sure you keep that in mind. Just because you're using an XML document does not mean it has to be valid. Now, just terminology here. If a document is not validated, if it fails the validation test against a schema, it is considered invalid. Again, don't let this confuse you. Just because it's invalid does not necessarily mean it's unusable. We'll look at this a little more as we go forward. Coming up next, we're going to start to look at the DTDs and how to use the DTD to validate an XML document. And the farther you go here, the more clearly this is going to come into focus for you.